Good afternoon. We're joined by the Country Director of Jesuit Refugee Service Malawi, Rufino Seva. And Rufino, you have been involved with Jesuit Refugee Service or JRS for quite some time. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? You're from the Philippines originally?
Yeah, I'm from the Philippines, and that's where I first had my experience working with refugees, mostly in the urban refugees for about 5 years. And then I was luckily offered a volunteer work by JRS in Thailand, where I moved in 1997 February and started working as a casework project officer for the Burmese caseload in Bangkok.
So these were refugees that were coming from Burma, now known as Myanmar.
Yes, yes.
Largely.
And after a year, the Burmese caseload and the non-Burmese caseload were all merged together as the Bangkok Refugee Program, which I was the first one to manage it.
Wow.
I was the first program coordinator.
And you spent some time in South Africa as the acting country director, and now you find yourself in Malawi.
Yeah, after more than 15 years in Thailand, I was asked to work in South Africa, where I was supposed to deal with the social assistance, where I was the senior social worker, just to increase the capacity of the team in terms of dealing with the urban refugees seeking assistance from JRS in Gauteng province. And later on, I was designated as the acting country director. And by the 5th month of my stay in South Africa, I was appointed as the country director.
And then subsequent to that, you moved to Malawi.
Yes, yes.
So let's talk about the Malawi project, because they're two very different scenarios.
Yeah.
You working in Thailand, then working in South Africa, and now you're working in Malawi. Because obviously in the context of Thailand and South Africa, you were dealing with urban refugees.
Yes.
And in Malawi, you're dealing with people in Dzaleka refugee camp,
Okay.
which they encamped. Are there marked differences in terms of refugees that are urban refugees and refugees that are in a camp?
There's obviously very different, because the urban refugees are not confined in any particular place, where their movements are not limited, but they are limited because of the restriction imposed by the host governments.
Yeah.
In terms of renting an apartments, accessing services. There's completely no services from the government. So the refugees will go from one church to another, from one NGO to another, to seek for assistance.
Mm.
While in the camp, they are confined, where the refugees are just there, waiting to be provided with assistance.
Mm.
And they are obviously in detention. And the urban refugee caseload are subject to arrest and detention, and those who are arrested are put in a detention. But those are just a small number of refugees and asylum seekers in detention. But the larger population are spread in the metropolitan.
Yeah. And obviously, freedom of movement, they have certain rights that people within the camp environment don't have. Freedom
Yes.
of movement.
Yes.
In the South African context, at least, they can access healthcare, they can access certain government services like education. But as you said, it's very limited, and that's because of other factors, not necessarily legal, but because of people being xenophobic and so forth.
And not only that, it's a limited resources, where the government is also facing challenges of meeting the needs of each population,
Sure,
especially those who are, I would say, out the margins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, sure.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult situation
Yes,
either.
yes.
But let's go back to Dzaleka. I mean, you have a huge number of people living there. What is it that Jesuit Refugee Service does in Dzaleka refugee camp?
In Dzaleka, we are actually in charge of running the schools, operating the schools. So we have the preschool, primary school, and the secondary school. So we have, I think we have like 5,800 in total of the students in Dzaleka. So Jesuit Refugee Service is the only NGO that manages these schools. Aside from these schools, we also have a center for children living with disabilities. So we call it the Respite Care Center, where we have basic services, a place where children living with disabilities are in there to avail of some basic physiotherapy activities, social activities, and play activities. Mm. So at the moment, we partner with the parents of the children living with disabilities in managing the Respite Care Center. Then we have the vocational skills training, where in a year we have like 40 to 60 refugees who train in carpentry and joinery and in sewing, where after they completed the course, they are given a startup kit to start their businesses. And then aside from that, we have the income generating activities, where refugees apply for grant so that they can set up their own self-help projects, and a lot of them are actually related to handicrafts. And then we have poultry, we have gardening, we have the rabbit farming, and then we also have carpentry, we have briquette making. So those are some, lots of maybe 46 of them all.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then of course there's also the Jesuit Refugee Service and Jesuit Commons Higher Education.
Yeah, that's the higher education
collaboration. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The Jesuit Commons Higher Education margin are to have two components. One is the diploma, which is run for 3 years. So we have already the cohort 6 on the way for admission interviews. So the students in the diploma could choose within the 3 years. They can choose a field of specialization.
Yeah.
So they can choose social work, business management, sociology, psychology, whatever they want. So they are studying online. The modules, the academic support and the lectures and everything are provided from the US through the online education. Now the other one is the community service learning tracks.
Yeah.
So in other words, these are the short courses that runs between 4 to 6 months. So we have the community health, we have the agriculture, we have child protection, we have peace and reconciliation, and a whole lot more of short courses where we develop the module according to the need in the camp. Yeah. And then we introduce them as one of the short courses offered at the JCM. And also we have the psychosocial services where our social workers and psychologists deals with individuals who have psychological, mental problems, those people who underwent trauma, so they go through a healing process. And we have support groups where each support group deals with different age and gender groups in the camp, specifically focusing on providing activities that promotes mental health.
Yes.
Okay, and also physical health. So they have the drama club, we have the judo club, and then we have a group that addresses the children with living with disabilities.
Yeah.
So we expect to have 5 groups this week. Yeah. And yeah. And of course the pastoral care, where a lot of refugees, mostly majority are Catholics, they're able to practice and strengthen their sacramental needs.
Oh, which is amazing. So in other words, you're looking after refugees in terms of their minds, bodies, and literally their spirit. Just looking at it, because Percy Chikwela is your project director
for education.
So we'll be speaking to him about the educational program specifically. Joe Slaven is your project director for the JRS JCM leg of the project, so we'll be speaking to him as well to get some more information. And of course, Vafa Hakimi is your project director for the psychosocial leg of the work that you're doing at Zaleka. And Father David Masikini, SJ, is our pastoral worker, so we'll be chatting to him about that also in more detail. Yeah. What I wanted to find out from your side, Rufino, in terms of the work that we're doing within the camp on a general, broader basis. I mean, what is the importance of it? Because from what I understand, Jesuit Refugee Service is a non-governmental organization, as a faith-based organization, has the biggest presence in Dzaleka refugee camp. I
would say that JRS presence in Dzaleka camp is very very important and very relevant because as JRS has been invited to work in Salika, the first thing we were involved is in education. And because refugees have no access to education and the government has very limited resources to be able to provide education to the refugee children, JRS came into this area where we are now like managing one of the biggest primary school in Malawi. And JRS is able to respond to keep the school going. And UNHCR is our partner as well. So we ensure that the quality of education we provide to the refugee children are of the quality standard set by the Jesuit and the JRS. And
which means it's a high quality education.
Yes,
it's
yes,
not, an education for the sake of an education.
Yes.
It is a high quality education.
Yeah, and it's the school in Salika is also a place where the government center within the district or the region is a center for examinations for the junior certificate for education and Malawi secondary certificate of education.
Wow.
So it's the biggest center so far in the region.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing work.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you know, refugee situations keep on changing and there's new developments that occur. You're currently dealing with a major new development. Do you want to tell us a little more about that?
The influx of Mozambican refugees, which is now about between 10,000 to 11,000. So there is a huge demand for response in the area of psychosocial, dealing with the youth, environment, education, non-food items, which usually related to shelter, the need for supplies in terms of keeping the hygiene and sanitation in the camp, the latrines, the water supplies. But JRS has been invited in the area of psychosocial and youth work. We are also now in the process of dealing with the education. It's more on addressing the gaps at the current intervention response to the education in the camp because the refugees is considered as a special population where it's the education that we have to provide is more in the emergency phase. That ensuring that all refugee children are not left out, that any of the special needs or deficiencies of the refugee children are provided specific intervention. So we are now active on the ground in providing psychosocial services where we respond to a number of refugees who have gone through trauma, sexual gender-based violence, and youth and adults who have nothing to do in the camp. So we create activities, either individual or support group, to keep the refugees busy, and that's including sports activities. And we are now also engaging the youth in the camp in ensuring that the environment are protected, that they care for the environment, that the environment is not depleted with trees. So having said that, we're also going to explore the possibility of supplying alternative fuels to the refugees so that they are not completely dependent on the woods, on gathering firewoods or around the camp.
Yeah,
so we don't want anymore the refugee camp to be depleted.
Yeah, because I mean that's one of the things that you notice about Dzaleka.
Yeah.
When you get there, there's very little foliage, if
Yes.
at all. And I understand there was a major project recently to replant trees,
Yeah.
which I think is amazing.
We did call it tree planting reforestation in Dzaleka camp, which is completely depleted of trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But getting back to it, I mean, there's a large number of people in Dzaleka. This new situation that has developed also has a large number. You mentioned somewhere between 10 to probably 12,000 people, Mozambican refugees.
Yeah. And that's in Kapisi and Luwani.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask you, just to paint the picture for people. Dzaleka refugee camp, how many people are you dealing with there? Where is it located?
Zaleka refugee camp is in Dowa district, which is in the central region. So those are registered about 24,000 plus another 1,000 which is not registered. So let's say we have more than 25,000 refugees in Zaleka alone. And then let's go to Capize, where the huge number of influx has been there, which is the camp, the temporary camp is actually about 300 meters away from the border of Mozambique. So that's about, let's say, between 10 to 11,000. And there is a relocation of this population to another district in Neno, in the Luanda refugee camp, which I think as of now is close to 500 who have been reset, or who have been relocated. So the Luanda refugee camp is now being prepared for a greater number of refugees and asylum seekers to be relocated from Capize and elsewhere. So these two districts are actually located in the southern region of Malawi.
And I'm sure, I mean, you're dealing with more than 30,000 people here. You're dealing more, closer to the region of 40,000 people.
Yes.
In two separate camps.
Yes. But at the end of December, actually at the end of June, our target that the new arrivals would reach 15,000. And by December, we are already expecting about 50,000. You see how, this is our target. And actually, all of us involved in responding to this crisis do not have the budget to be able to respond all the needs. So UNHRS as the leading agency in responding to this crisis is going to launch an interagency refugee appeal to be able to find funding to respond to this crisis.
Now, unfortunately, the situation in Mozambique is relatively new, whereas Zaleka refugee camp has been existent for 22 years now,
yes,
if not longer.
No, since 1996, sorry.
Since 1996,
yes.
So it's 20 years old now.
Yeah.
The average stay of people in the camp, I mean, we have people, children, and young people being born in the camp, still living there. It's been there for quite some time. This situation with in Capize and Mwanza is very new. Yeah,
and 65% in Capize and Luani are children. 65%. They are children. So the pressure in providing education and other safe spaces for children is a major concern.
Well, Rufino, I mean, we can only wish you well in the work that you're doing in the area. I mean, is there any other final words that you want to share with the listeners and with the viewers in terms of what the situation is, the circumstances that you're working under? Because despite the difficulty, as I said, mentioned now, dealing with almost 40,000 people, both in Zaleka as well as in Mwanza and Capize, it's amazing that you have an extremely great rapport with the refugees. I travel, my upcoming trip in August would be my third travel to Malawi. To Zaleka refugee camp. It would be the first time I go to Capize and Mwanza. And the amazing thing is the rapport that people have with you in the camp. People, despite the fact that they're refugees, despite the fact that they're having difficulties, they're happy. They have restaurants that they're running. There's an automotive workshop. Young people in the JRS, JCM program are motivated, they're working hard. Is there any final words that you want to share with us in a minute?
In our work with the refugees, we ensure that our staff are actually engaging refugees in every activity and every work we do. So now we mobilize refugees to be part of our response to their needs and problems. So a lot of refugees are actually part of our work, part of our intervention in the community.
They're part of the team.
Yes, they're part of the team. So there is a refugee participation in all the things we do in the camp, and even in the future we will do this. Our strategy is to ensure that refugees have a say, share responsibilities in responding to their needs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best.